guys, we just made it. We're unloading everything out the Jeep. Got the gauges, the fuel rail, the injectors. Integra's posted up. This is a B20 turbo Integra GSR transmission. It's my brother's car. In a few seconds here, we'll probably open the back gate of the storage unit so you guys can get a better look at it. Right now, we're just trying to get the car ready for 2020. We bought it late last year, and it was previously turboed, but it wasn't done right. It's missing all the gauges. It doesn't have a fuel system, so that's something I gotta go through and make right and add to the car. So the turbo that it has all the supporting mods, and it's not fuel cutting, and it boosts the way it should with the management system we're using, S300 Honda Data ECU will be running on this with boost by gear. Supposedly the block's built. I haven't pulled the pan to confirm that, but she'll still be around 300 horsepower once she's all said and done, if not more. Alright, we're gonna begin by removing the rail, the regulator, and the injectors that came on this thing. I believe they're stocks. So we're gonna put a nice AEM rail that we purchased offline, and some Bosch injectors, some 1000 cc's. I'm gonna go through, start undoing these injector clips. You just squeeze the tab here and pull up, and they will come away from the injectors. That one was already undone. Alright, so usually you got 10s holding the harness down to the rail, but in our case, they're gone. So we won't have to worry about that. Vacuum line right here on my regulator is held on with the zip tie. So I'm just gonna pull away like so. Got my complete vacuum line. Set that off to the side there. And then you got your fuel line down here, which I will remove off camera. I'll come back because I will need both my hands to do that. Alright guys, got the fuel rail and the injectors put together for the most part, the way it's gonna sit for now. I ended up blocking this off for now. I am gonna run a 6 AN and 8 AN feed and return line in this thing to the modded fuel canister to the 450 pump, but for now, since we don't have the lines, I'm just gonna bolt it up in place like this. I got the AEM regulator in place. We still gotta get a gauge for the fuel pressure reading. The stock line will bolt on to this adapter. So I'm gonna set the injectors back in place. One thing you guys have to do, and it'll make it easier on you, if you take a little oil or something of these O-rings, they'll go in the rail a lot easier, and I'm sure they'll go into the ports on the intake where they need to sit a lot easier as well, and you have less of a chance to actually breaking that O-ring like I actually did with one of the injectors. Thank God AEM sent me some extra ones with this rail. So I took one of their spares that came in the box and put it on that injector, and it was the same O-ring. So I'm just gonna press this in place now. Get over here and record me. Line up these studs. Alright, there we go. So that's how it's gonna look. I'm gonna have to route this harness so it sits in a way it should. There we go. So I'm gonna take the 10mm nuts I previously took off, and they are gonna go exactly back in these studs, but I'm gonna need to remove all these spacers on these injectors because the rail's sitting up too high and these studs aren't long enough. Or the other thing I could do would be get longer studs, but I think these are removable, so I'm gonna try that first to try to get this to sit lower. So in the last video, I was fighting getting the fuel rail all the way down. These grommets were on the bottom of the injectors. I don't know if they put these on for shipping purposes or these are Bosch 1000cc injectors. They might be a multi-purpose injector for another car if this is some kind of spacer that's needed on another car. But I went ahead and took these off, all four of them, and it allowed me to sit the injector in further into the manifold, and the rail is now flush where it needs to on the studs. So now I'm gonna go ahead and put my 10mm bolts back in place here, and I'm gonna tighten this down in place. Then I'm gonna connect these connectors into the injectors. I'm gonna put my vacuum line back on my regulator, and I'm gonna put both my return lines, my feed and my return line here for my fuel. I'll put these back in place. This one just pushes on the injector. I have to get a hose clamp to secure it properly. This vacuum line goes here like so. Harness.
We might need those clips.
Yeah, in order to run these Bosch injectors in our car, we might have to put a conversion harness that we already purchased. So do we have that here? So we got these adapters here. They came with these Bosch injectors. I believe they just go from OBD1 to OBD2, and it's just because the way the connector is. So we're gonna put these in place like so, and then we're gonna clip them to the injector. get this piece I took off here. That's the locking nut to this fuel line. The new AEM rail did come with a new washer and a new adapter, so I didn't have to reuse any of my old washers. So that's a fresh washer, which is cool. Set this back in place. That was a 22. So, on all the ports I'm not utilizing right now, I did go ahead and use Teflon tape to prevent leaks. So that's something good to do. They use the liquid. You can use the liquid form one, but that one's just the tape. So that's just to prevent fuel leaks for now. We'll put a gauge here. But we still got to purchase one, and this port that I blocked off is going to be for my return line when I purchase that. So the only thing I have left to do is tighten these 10mm nuts that hold the rail to the studs, because it's still loose. But after I do that, the install will be done. Thank you for watching. Remember, subscribe to the channel. Any support is welcome.